Okay.
So they've used, for instance, AI image generators to create images of
Yes.
uh, of the history of science. So
Okay.
wonderful.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Privilege today morning from Kolkata that I have Professor Georg Matthias Detterman from the University of Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar. He holds a PhD in history from SOAS, University of London, from which in 2013 he was one of the two joint winners of the BRISMES Leigh Douglas Memorial Prize for the best PhD dissertation on a Middle Eastern topic. He is the author of Historiography in Saudi Arabia, Globalization and the State in the Middle East. He is also the author of Diversity, Equity and Inclusion of Astronomy and Islam, Science Fiction and Extraterrestrial Life. His paper is available in the academia.edu called as Mid- uh, Middle Eastern Crisis, Islam and the Extraterrestrial Life. So, without further delay, I would like Professor Detterman to please go on with your intriguing and invaluable research which will help so many research scholars all over the world. And today's topic is artificial intelligence in the history of science classroom. Thank you so much, Professor Detterman, for being in our podcast, Research Academia.
Thank you so much, Malika. Thank you for having me. Uh, I think when we corresponded, you would like our conversation to be about artificial intelligence in the history of science classroom. Uh,
Yes.
I've been interested in the history of science ever since my undergraduate studies uh, at the University of Vienna. Although I only started working on the history of the natural sciences, specifically uh, after my doctoral studies at SOAS University of London. Uh, I've been interested in artificial intelligence, however, for much longer. I grew up as a science fiction fan. I've been interested in Star Trek, Star Wars, and numerous other science fiction products that have featured some of the most beloved robots in media history. Many of you will be familiar, for instance, with C3PO or R2D2 from Star Wars, and uh, uh, many of you who are Star Trek fans might
Mhm.
also know the android Data, for instance. These are figures of popular culture that I grew up with. Uh, uh, I work here at Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar, which is a campus that focuses on the arts and design. And many of my colleagues and students have been fascinated with the most recent technology of generative artificial intelligence, with apps such as Midjourney, DALI, and ChatGPT, among many others. And I've had the great privilege of working with many talented students who have been experimenting with these exciting new apps.
Okay, that's really great. I also, while you was telling, I also recollect my days when I was in my school level. I used to watch Star Trek with lot of wonders. I used to, as Sylvester Stallone, I think, played the key role there. So it was really a great experience during that time. Yes. So now let me ask you, why is artificial intelligence an especially important topic in the courses on history of science particularly?
Thank you. So artificial intelligence is a topic that is very hot at the moment. A lot of people talk about it inside as well as outside of academia. So it's one of those topics that has dominated so many media in recent years. Similarly, as political topics, such as, for instance, the situation in Palestine, or such as the war in Ukraine, or such as COVID-19 previously. So it's a topic that attracts a lot of attention. The problem sometimes, if you have a topic that is very much in the media, is you're not quite sure whether this is a hype or whether this topic is overhyped, whether we are indeed in the middle of a revolution, or whether we are just sort of continuing a longer term development. And I think understanding whether a certain discussion about technology in general is a hype or not, in order to understand that, I think it is useful to look at history. Right, so this is not the first time in history that we have talked about artificial intelligence. This is not the first time that we've talked about robots. The term robot itself was coined about 100 years ago by a Czech writer called Karel Čapek. Robot itself is a Czech word that refers to slaves, to enslaved people. So the word is not new, the concept is not new, and also discussions about the use of machines, about this, about computers taking jobs, computers revolutionizing education is not entirely new either. Especially the growth of like personal computers in the 1980s in particular. So since that time when it was possible for a lot of people to actually have a computer in their own home, rather than just having access to a supercomputer at like a laboratory. Ever since that time, people have discussed possible revolutions of education through computing. So Isaac Asimov, for instance, who many science fiction fans recognize as one of the leading voices in pioneering the thinking about robots, like he, for instance, predicted that computers could be used to have education on a one-on-one level. So education not taking place in a large classroom with lots of people, but education taking place mostly between one human and the computer as a possible teacher. Now, Isaac Asimov thought about this in the 1970s, even before personal computers became widespread, and certainly before the spread of the internet in the 1990s and 2000s, which Isaac Asimov never really experienced. So the history of science and the history of technology can help students and can help everybody understand the current discussions around artificial intelligence in a larger context, put that in a larger framework and see what is new and what is not really new. Machines are not new, robots are not new, thinking about intelligent machines is not new. What is perhaps new is the power that generative artificial intelligence has recently acquired, so that we can now more than ever before have something like an intelligent conversation with a machine, and that we can ask a machine in natural human language to do something, and the machine, the app, the software would generate images or would generate texts for us very, very quickly, sort of almost sort of at the speed of like a normal conversation between two humans. AI deserves a place in the artificial intelligence. AI deserves a place in the history of science classroom because history of science tells us more about where AI comes from and what it can be used for.
Great, great to know about all this, because it will help a lot of students to who are coming up, the young scholars, to take up how to use, how to incorporate AI in their teaching. Great, great to know. Yes. Now, which apps are popular with you and your students?
So AI is this rapidly growing field where it is very, very hard for almost anyone to have an overview of all the software that is available now. And I encourage my students to sort of experiment as broadly, as widely as they can, find new apps, use them, and tell me and tell their classmates about their experiences. So far, what I found is that my students to ChatGPT, initially mainly for creating text, but now increasingly also for creating images. In addition, students have also been using actively Midjourney and DALL-E, and then also the artificial intelligence functions that are built into other software. So a lot of my students are big fans of Canva, which is a very, very user-friendly design software, like a software that makes the creation of, for instance, posters very easy, much easier than Photoshop, for instance.
Okay.
But my students have also been using these products that are more aimed at professional designers, such as Adobe Photoshop, such as Adobe Illustrator, and that entire Adobe Creative Suite, and the AI that is increasingly just part of these larger design apps. So my students are using different different apps, different software, and I personally can't claim great expertise in any single one of them. And I would also say it is very, very hard for anybody to be an expert user of both Midjourney as well as DALL-E, and then also be an expert in Photoshop and Illustrator and ChatGPT. Instead, I encourage each students to develop their own expertise in a specific app and share what they have found about each app, test the limits of what each app can do, and come back to us with what they have learned.
Right. Really, really, it's very inspiring for the students, you know. And I find that always, if there it is more interact when it is an interactive session with the students, and only by giving a lecture nowadays, students are not happy. Even for the teacher also, he or she gets bored. So this type of images, this type of new and new learning will definitely help the students to learn history in a more attractive and more intriguing way, I may say. So now, what are the problems or challenges of using AI in education? according to you?
Thank you so much. So there are many issues. So as I said, I want students to share their experiences in using this platform or that platform, this particular version of ChatGPT versus that particular version of ChatGPT. And some students, for instance, are using the free version of a specific app. Some students are using the paid version of specific apps, each of which has specific features. So I want the students to speak as openly as possible about their learning, their engagement with these various apps, and sometimes getting the students to really explain the process of how they've worked with AI is difficult. Some students might not immediately want to admit that they have used AI. There is the problem of plagiarism, where students would use AI for an essay, but then they would not tell you immediately that they have indeed used AI to help them. So one of the challenges for me has been sort of to try to create a safe where they can be honest and say, yes, I've used ChatGPT for this, and I've used that particular prompt. These are the words that I've used, and I got these 3 different results, and I didn't like them at first, so I had to change my prompt, and then I was still not quite happy, so I had to edit whatever I got. So I want my students ideally to share their process and not just the end result. The end result is often quite beautiful. So the text, for instance, generated by ChatGPT is generally well written. Right, we don't find many grammatical spelling errors in a text that's created by AI. It's often well structured as well. So the final product is sometimes not the most original writing. It's not the most provocative and engaging writing, but it is generally like writing to a good standard. Similarly, a lot of AI art is beautifully done. It looks quite impressive, and especially when sort of dealing with sort of fantastical landscapes. And I can show some examples here, if you allow me.
Yes, definitely. You can go ahead with sharing the screen of yours.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So these are all artworks by my students from this semester. So using software that is about as up to date as it gets. So AI can really create these beautiful images about humanities topics, about sciences topics, and also like interdisciplinary topics that combine sort of the world of the human with the world of nature.
Yes, can you zoom?
So for instance, right, this is AI work inspired by history with the hourglass, for instance.
Beautiful.
Or AI is really wonderful to create these magnificent futuristic landscapes.
Wonderful.
Again, sort of combining different fields like philosophy, for instance, history, architecture, and so on. And AI is like very, very powerful. Yes. And AI can sort of have students like think about like how different fields can be connected, for instance, through art.
Great.
So the outcomes are quite beautiful. I've used them in history of science classes, this kind of artwork created by students. I've used it in Middle East history classes. And if you look at these images, they're really technically well done. But I would ask the students to sort of tell me, how did you get to that final product?
Right. Beautiful.
That you found. So, for instance, what the AI cannot do. So, for instance, in this particular image, it looks like a beautiful early modern painting from maybe the Dutch Golden Age. But if you zoom in, then you see there's sort of something wrong with the faces and so on. So sometimes in pictures with a lot of people showing realistic faces. Similar, there is sometimes, again, images that look beautiful, but if you sort of zoom in, it looks less and less realistic. So this, for instance, art created in a Middle East history course, like beautiful architecture with a lot of details. But if you notice, it sort of almost looks like a very unrealistic cityscape where almost every single building is a mosque or a mausoleum or a palace and so on. So there don't seem to be any markets or like common people's houses. Another sort of challenge that I found with AI art is that AI is really good at creating text by itself in ChatGPT. It is really good at also creating images, but it is not very good at creating images with text. So, for instance, if my students are trying to use AI to create maps of the Middle East, then it's sort of, you get maps like this where Middle East is written there, where the Black Sea should be, where there is a lot of unidentifiable writing, and sort of just the image looks interesting, but the writing is off in itself. To maybe give another example, also from the Middle East. So, for instance, here, here it looks like a historical map, but you can recognize regions, but even proportions are somewhat out of place, and then whatever writing appears just seems to be random. So this should be Saudi Arabia, this would be Iran, but but clearly here the students are sort of have pushed the limits of what the AI can do, where you would probably be better off using an actual historical map, an actual image, rather than having ChatGPT generate something for you. I've also had students in my history classes, for instance, create timelines. Here, like human history, and again, it looks very beautiful. The colors are nice, the shapes are nice. A lot of the components are recognizable, but then, the text is off. For instance, so we have like Indus, for instance, Industrial Revolution, where the students realize if they have work like that they should, even if they use AI, they would probably need to edit it heavily afterwards, and especially correct the text. As I said, when students are just using ChatGPT for text, like you often get beautiful paragraphs. So, for instance, a student used ChatGPT here. to help them with writing an essay about Islamic sciences. So ChatGPT is very good at that. ChatGPT is also very good at sort of giving you a list of references.
Okay.
So books. However, you even need to be careful there because sometimes AI would just make up references. AI is also so far not very good either at combining references with text. So AI can write for you a paragraph and it can give you a list of references, but it's not very good so far at sort of finding the right reference for the right footnote at the right spot of the essay. Now, this might change. AI is constantly developing. We have constantly new versions, and one AI generator is more powerful than another one in certain respects, and sometimes the paid version is more powerful than the free version, and so on. So the limits what AI can do are constantly shifting.
Right.
However, I want my students to be able to talk about this and sort of just be as openly and in much detail as possible. Just tell me about what have they encountered, what have they found, what are the problems, what are the potentials of AI, but also where are humans still better, or where do humans still need to sort of fix things that the AI can't do.
Right. Excellent. Really excellent. Now, for the teachers like us, how we can use AI in our classrooms. Like you see, I am in a remote college, in an undergraduate college, where there is not much, I say, scope. But I can do one thing. I can take them to the smart classroom and I can teach them, definitely. It will be a wonder when I am teaching them, I think, architecture, art and architecture of European architecture, the Renaissance, and they will get a sort of a attraction to them. So what advice you will give for us teachers who are in a remotely placed college and who wants to use AI in our classrooms?
Thank you so much. So if you are teaching remotely, right, so if, for instance, you're teaching virtually or via Zoom and so on, this would assume that your students probably already have a laptop and they already have a smartphone, and thereby they already have a lot of the tools to use to use artificial intelligence. So a lot of the apps that I've mentioned, Canva, Midjourney, DALL-E, and so on, the students should be able to run them on their laptop, and they have done that in the past. So I think for the teacher would be just important to be as open as possible, to use it, to have the students use whatever tools they need to create the best work. And that's something that I do tell my students, like, I want you to create the best work that you can, and then we'll talk about it. And I want you to use whatever tools, human tools, technological tools, library tools, software tools, etc. Whatever tools you need in order to create the best work that you can. And I want you to be honest about this. So don't sort of hide things or people, software that helped you, right? Because
right.
Sort of giving credit building on the works of others, citing correctly. These are some of the pillars of academic work, right? We don't expect our students or anybody to reinvent the wheel. So we want people to stand on the shoulders of giants. But we want them to be aware that they're standing on the shoulders of giants, and we want them to acknowledge the giants of literature, the giants of computing that they're standing on. So for that, again, sort of keep trying to get the students to speak about how they're using technology. And sometimes that's not easy, right? We're all using technology, but we just don't sometimes can talk about what we're actually doing, or what we're actually, what the software is doing either. And that is a problem too, right? So just like students sometimes have problems citing the right literature, and AI would not tell you sometimes where it got the content from. But as much as we can, we have to probe our students, and we have to probe the software too,
Right.
to tell us as much as possible about where they got certain information from. Now, you also mentioned, how we can use it in the classroom. Something practical that I think always works very well is sort of, maybe don't use ChatGPT or Midjourney or DALL-E necessarily to create a final product. It will probably not give you a final product that you're truly satisfied with, or a final product that will truly reflect your own voices. However, this kind of software is often quite powerful when it comes to generating concept art, right? When it comes to sort of brainstorming.
Right.
Again, if you allow me to share my share my screen. So, for instance, this would be a futuristic Middle Eastern cityscape. A lot of your viewers might recognize the Burj Khalifa in Dubai here, that world's tallest building. Obviously, this is not a realistic image of Dubai either, or of a Middle Eastern city, but it can sort of be a product that could sort of inspire you to think about urban futures, for instance, or let's something like this, an artwork again about Middle Eastern history. There you can see again that problem that a lot of AI image generators have, in that the images are great, but then the text is often off. So you wouldn't use the AI image generator to give you a final product, but be a starting point, like to start a conversation about society, or sometimes about the AI itself, right? So, for instance, this would be another example from the history of science, an image of Albert Einstein. And so this could be a starting point for a conversation at the beginning of a class. So, for instance, why, even in a setting in the global south, or in a Middle Eastern country or a South Asian country, in an Indian Ocean country like Qatar, why do people, when they think about scientists, often think of like old white men, right? sort of where does this come from? And why does even AI, when it sort of generates an image of a scientist, where does even AI give you an image of Albert Einstein? And then sort of students can think and talk about sort of why that is, right? Is this in fact the reality that when it comes to Nobel Prizes in physics, that there are a handful of women among them? That sort of, yes, women unfortunately are very underrepresented among Nobel Prize winners.
Right.
So does the AI here sort of reflect those other biases that we might have in society? And sort of, and if it is, sort of, can we change it? Can we sort of write, for instance, women back into the history of science, whether it's Western science or whether it is Arab and Muslim or Middle Eastern and South Asian science? To give you some other examples here, AI image generated images about Middle Eastern Islamic sciences here, beautiful library with beautiful instruments. Again, not necessarily realistic, and
but a basic concept can be given to them, right?
Exactly. But here, for instance, just like how we often imagine a modern physicist to be an old man, sometimes when you think about the history of Islamic science or Middle Eastern science, we think about sort of bearded old men. To give you another example, so here again some kind of image that might show a learned scholar giving a text to somebody who might be a more senior scholar or ruler. Here in the background we have other male figures. These faces are not great either, and like I mentioned, AI sometimes has problems sort of depicting realistic faces. However, we can sort of, even if AI does not necessarily think of that, we can think about where are the women in that story, right? Women were part of every city and every palace that had scholars, that had libraries, and sort of we can maybe use here AI as a starting point, but we can also maybe create our own images or adapt those images and maybe try to sort of think about would there have been people from underrepresented groups there? Would there have been women in these institutions of learning also? What could have been the place of women in these all sort of libraries, mosques, places of learning? So this is another way where we can to be creative and to be imaginative and to go beyond what the AI can do. Sort of use AI as a starting point, but get to a final product that is more than what the AI can do, and maybe more what a human can do either.
Right.
By themselves.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Really fascinating by your lecture, by your presentations. Really fascinated. My students will also be they will be awesome, very excited to know about all these developments, because we are, my college is far from the city, from Kolkata, but I try my level best to teach them as attractive as possible. We have a smart classroom in our college too. So at times when I teach them architecture or sort of a renaissance and all, audio visual effect creates a lot of, it helps a lot. Because when you're like for me, when I am teaching them the Indian temples, like the temple architecture, so that time visual aids are very important. You cannot just speak and tell about the characteristics. They will not be able to know. They will not be able to learn properly. So audio visual effect creates a lot of attraction to the students, and this podcast today will greatly help my students. Thank you so very much. And last but not the least, final advice or message you give to the young scholars who want to learn and incorporate in the history of science their this AI.
Yeah. The final advice would be to just be open, to learning as much as you can about this technological revolution that we're in, and be as open to what the students are learning, and be encouraged, and also be encouraged to playing around. Yes, indeed, learning with this AI can be playful. It can be very imaginative. It can sort of open up new possibilities of thinking that might be realistic or might not be realistic always, but that could just get us out of just our conventional ways of thinking. I want to show one more image, for instance.
Yes.
So this would be an AI generated image of a place of learning, a mosque perhaps, or a palace, where you can see Muslim men and Muslim women learning together.
Right.
I mean, it is a somewhat idealized setting, and it's not a realistic image. And we can see, for instance, that again, AI has these problems sometimes with creating realistic faces. However, it can sort of make us think about possibilities. Are there places in the past where you had like that, women and men learning together, and not just sort of education having taken place in a sort of segregated? Or could this be a way of imagining the future, at least? So
Definitely.
So AI could then just open up new worlds for us altogether.
Yes.
So allow us to think outside of the box that we are in, outside of the box that sometimes AI in itself can be in. AI in itself can be sometimes a black box, but together we sort of can just think about new possibilities. And I think that is probably true for any subject that you're teaching, whether it's the history of science or anything else. Sort of, how can we think about new possibilities? And
Exactly.
AI can be a powerful help with that.
Thank you so very much. It's my gratitude to you from the bottom of my heart to come and share your learning, your excellent deliberations. And in future also, I will be wishing, I have not covered another aspect of your excellency, that is regarding your history of astronomy. So I'll be wishing and hoping that I'll come, get you again in our podcast to when you can discuss about that area of yours, the history of astronomy. That's also a fascinating area, I must say.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for having me, and big thanks for your service to our field, to history of science, and for your service to public education in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Have a good day too.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye. Okay. Can leave.